back. It's finally good to be back. I haven't been back in a while, almost a month really. I was in camp for a month. Took a little break from the podcast. Even if I would have been on, the service was really bad where I was in Pennsylvania. So spent 4 weeks in Camp Kaylee. Had a great time, had a blast. But now we're back. Good to see you, Chris. It's been a while since we've been together.
Yeah.
First episode in almost 3 episodes. I missed 3 episodes. Ed Stein. I saw you did two by yourself. So I'm sure you missed a lot. Of course you missed me. But how are those 2 episodes, by the way? Didn't get to take a look at those.
Oh, that's crushing, man. No, welcome back. Great to have you back. A little lonely trying to do it by myself and everything, and just have some topics where I can't ask for like, hey, what's your opinion? Because there's nobody else there to give an opinion but me. So definitely great to have you back. I think they're fine. Kind of a little bit tricky. All-Star break makes things a little bit more challenging because so much of the baseball world is about what's going on with the All-Star break, and teams are kind of shutting things down, and players are maybe resting a little bit more frequently because they know they got the All-Star break, so they can get an extended break and everything. So a little bit more challenge, but I think came up with some decent topics, and hopefully made for some decent shows. So it was nice to do that, and kind of nice doing it by myself. But at the end of the day, like this works so much better just with the two of us.
Yeah, well, with that, I got a lot of baseball to catch up on. I missed a good month of baseball. I would say that I kept myself in the loop enough to know what's going on. Like I kept up with the Yankees, obviously. Here and there, I checked in on other stuff. I really kept up with like the more important things. Wasn't really watching games, and really couldn't watch games, but got a lot to catch up on. But this is a good chance because you've been on your baseball game. I haven't, so gotta learn from you here. But another addition, as Chris can show you with his shirt. I still haven't gotten my shirt, but I didn't even send him my money. I gotta pay him, and then hopefully I'll get it. And next week, maybe I'll even have it. But since Chris is wearing the shirt, it is time for our bi-weekly replacement level players. Because you can't do it without me. So now that I'm here, it's been 3 weeks, guys. So sorry that we couldn't have our replacement level players, but now that we do, it's time. So let me go first. I'm going to go with my hitter first. So on the hitting side, both of my players are actually in New York, not on the same team. So my first hitter is going to be Pete Alonso. 6 for his last 52 at bats, hitting 4.0, 43 in the past 7 games. Just 1 for 23 over that stretch. He's hit just 2 homers in the past 15 games, despite being actually ranks 5th in the majors in home runs and just 3rd in the NL behind Matt Olson and Mookie Betts. His OPS dropped to 779 and is now hitting just 203. And everyone knows that the Mets are really struggling, and it's not really what we expected out of such a team that's spent that much money and are top 3 in payroll. But that is what's going on with the Mets, and they're 5 games under 500 right now, 16 and a half behind the Braves, who just can't stop winning. So I think the key here, at least for the Mets, is obviously getting Alonso back on track, because if they have any shot of at least making a wildcard spot, which are actually 7 games out right now, the Phillies, the 3rd wildcard spot, then they're gonna at least have to have Alonso pick things up, because if that doesn't happen, then they pretty much have no chance of making a wildcard spot. The division at least is way out of reach for now. I don't think the Mets can come back from such a deficit, but the wildcard spot still can be on the table. So Alonso, pick things up, sir.
Yeah, and you probably missed it. He did bean one kid at the home run derby. I don't know if you were able to catch that or not, but yeah, there are a couple kids. Yeah, there are a couple kids that took a few not home run balls, got some injuries and stuff like that. Like I don't know if you saw Vlad Guerrero smoked one kid like in the face, like in the eye, and it's like all swollen up and everything. It was pretty bad. But no, for my replacement player, I'm gonna go with the now once hot Cincinnati Reds, who are now fading. I believe they're like 3-7 over their last 10 games. Yeah, yeah, 3-7. So, but we're going with Spencer Steer. I know I kind of talked about him, I think, a while back about possibly being a replacement player for the All-Star game because he's doing really good. Well, he finally gets to be the replacement level player because he's doing really bad. Over the last 2 weeks, he's gone 3 for 32 with just 1 run scored, two walks, 13 strikeouts. Nothing else. No extra base hits at all. Just 3 singles for a .094 average and a 241 OPS. And kind of like the Reds, he's been in a slump and the whole team's been in a slump. So there should be a bounce back from him. He's been very, very good all season long. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Maybe this is a little bit of like rookie wall from him, or just the fact that something's going on with the Cincinnati Reds and they're all kind of slumping. But he is my guy for my replacement level hitter. For pitching, I'm going to go with another guy that I said should be in the All-Star break, and that is going to be Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins. Over his last handful of starts, which total up to 9 2/3 innings, he's given up 3 home runs, walked 5 batters, struck out 17, which is phenomenal. No wins, no quality starts for a beautiful 7.45 ERA and a 1.55 WHIP. Like I was talking about with Ryan earlier, he's kind of been alternating a good start with a bad start, and they've kind of coincided with who the opponent is. If it was a good team, he's was phenomenal. If they were a bad team, or if they were a good team, he struggled, and if they were a bad team, he did really well. Well, in his last couple starts, he played Oakland and Baltimore, and Baltimore he was lit up in for 10.38 ERA in that start, and then Oakland he was a little bit better, kind of halved that ERA with a 5.06. So hopefully he can get things turned around. He's been great on the season with a 3.77 ERA, 8 wins in his 19 starts, and 131 strikeouts over 112 innings. So I'm not too worried about him, but for now he is our replacement level pitcher on my side. But Rafal, tell us who you've got for yours.
Yeah, so before I get to my personal pitcher, I actually wanted to mention something. I was actually thinking about going with Volpe on the hitting side, just because he is back to his rookie slumps. I think that a lot of Yankee fans, before he really broke out, which was like right before the summer, he really peaked. He was really hot. That was after everyone, when he got his, I think it was his Parm. Talking Yanks actually made a shirt about that. I think it was his grandma. He made a specialty, I think it was like Parmesan cheese, something like that. I don't know, something like that. But that kind of sparked things for him. He really went on a tear, and then it kind of slowed things down again. I think he's like 3 for his last 29, something like that. But I went with Alonso just because he's a more established hitter and someone that should be hitting better than he is right now. So on the pitching side, I stayed with my stripes. I'm sure you had this in mind. Carlos Rodon. Ever since he came back, he's made just 3 starts since being reinstated from that chronic back issue and the forearm issue that he dealt with since really just in the offseason and really just into the season. But now he's back and he's made just 3 starts. He's faced the Angels, Rockies, and Cubs. And through those 3 starts, 7.36 ERA, 12 hits, 12 earned runs, 4 homers, and a 1.43 WHIP, which is 11 strikeouts. Definitely not the level that pitching and quality pitching you expect from such a prominent pitcher as Rodon. 11 strikeouts. That's not even 4 strikeouts per outing. So he really needs to pick things up. I think that this could just be, getting back into things and kind of finding his form, because he did miss a good amount of time. He missed close to 2 months of baseball, which is, 10, 11 starts. But now that he's back, many thought, and a lot of Yankees fans like myself expected that the Yankees would start winning games, at least when he started. But like this, he's given 3 losses in all 3 of his starts. All 3 of his starts were losses, and it's just not what everyone expected when he would come back. So hopefully he can pick things up. The Yankees do need to win games. Just there's nothing more to say really. They need to win, and they're not, as they just got swept by the Angels. But Chris, now that we've covered our replacement level players, why don't we talk about a little interesting topic? A topic that Chris criticized at first, actually, but now that I explained myself a little bit, he sort of got into it. I saw that we texted last night. I was like, "Hey, Chris, I got an idea." He's like, "Eh," but I tossed him what I thought, pushed him my ideas, and we got him into it. So today's topic is going to be payroll. So everyone knows, and everybody knows that the top three teams and the top three highest payrolls are all teams that currently do not have a playoff spot. We got the Mets, $348 million. The Yankees, $279 million, and the San Diego Padres, $247. The Phillies are started picking things up. They have the fourth highest payroll, so they will not be part of that. But this is a pretty interesting topic just because these teams spend the most money, and this kind of proves that maybe spending money does not win games. And that's kind of been the storyline here, at least since the beginning of the season. These three teams are just not playing a good brand of baseball, and definitely underperforming, completely underperforming. Because if you look at all preseason rankings and all preseason projections, all three of these teams are top five contenders, and they were all supposed to be top five in every power rankings in the middle of July. But that's not where we're at right now. All three of these teams are under 500. So, Chris, what do we got here?
I mean, like you said, money can't buy you wins. It's argued if it can buy you happiness or not. And clearly, as a Yankees fan who's upset that his big free agent pitcher who's only made a handful of starts coming back from injury is not performing at an all-star level, clearly does not buy you happiness in the baseball world either. But it is kind of interesting to see that all three of those teams, not one is in the playoffs. They're all on the outside looking in, and not even just like trying to win the division. They're all on the outside looking in at the final wild card spot. And really, the Yankees are the team that is the closest to actually making it in the playoffs. They're 3.5 games back of Toronto for that last wild card spot. I'm sure you'll love it that they're also a game behind Boston, who's only 2.5 games back of that final wild card spot. So, the better team in the Boston Red Sox is, currently ahead of the Yankees. But the Padres are 6.5 back, and the Mets are 7 games back. And, in looking at the rosters and kind of not just this season, but kind of moving forward, the teams have some similarities. Like, they've got a fairly decent pool of upcoming players in their farm system and everything like that, but not one of those teams has a frontline starting pitcher that they could look to and say, okay, this is a guy next season or maybe late in the year we'll call him up to the majors and see what he's got. Most of the teams that have starting pitchers, they're middle of the rotation guys at best. Most of them are back end starters who could be moved into the bullpen to see if they're more effective there. So, that's kind of unfortunate because these teams do have a lot of star quality players that they can get a good return in. But if they're going to go that route of selling at the trade deadline, they should really look at targeting some very young starting rotation guys who are going to be or could be frontline starters. Looking at the Mets, they've got some notable impending free agents, like Max Scherzer, who has a player option for, I think, what is it, $41.5 million or something like that next season. And I know there's been a lot of talk about him possibly being traded at the trade deadline, which, again, makes sense because he is that frontline starter, and there's a lot of teams out there who are competing for the playoffs and World Series that could use a Max Scherzer on their roster, even if he's a little bit older and not kind of having classic Max Scherzer type seasons. But that player option, it's $43.3 million that he's got the player option for. So that's a lot of money, and I think that's really going to hurt some of the teams that are out there that could really need him. I mean, he's going to take up a big portion of team salary caps or salary out there for them, and I think it would limit on teams that would be interested in trading him, and then also because those teams would be trading for him, like say the Dodgers, they know that they may be one of just a handful of other teams that are competing against it, they may not want to spend a lot to try to get him. And, I don't blame him because you kind of know that this guy is going to be, possibly a free agent next season. Most likely not because I don't know. I think it'd be very hard to turn down 43.3 million. But I'm not in that position, so maybe it's a different feeling. But they've also got Carlos Carrasco, who I would say is kind of another notable name. I mean, the big guy is really Max Scherzer. Then they've got Mark Canha, Tommy Pham, Dave Robertson. Some guys that are going to be interesting pieces for them, but they could be in line to sell. And I would say if they're going to, they really need to kind of look at getting some frontline help for them moving forward. The Yankees, they don't really have any notable free agents. I mean, you've got Frankie Montas, who's been out all season long, Luis Severino, and Josh Donaldson, Harrison Bader, Wandy Peralta. I mean, those are nice guys to have, and you can definitely make cases for them to be brought back and be part of the Yankees going forward. But at the same time, you can also make a strong case that, it's time to move on from them. I mean, Donaldson is going to be 38 next year. Severino's going to be 30, but he's missed a lot of time and kind of been a little bit ineffective here and there and stuff. Montas, who knows what he's going to be like coming back. And then Bader, when he's in and he's healthy, he can be a good player, but he's going to miss time. And again, is he a guy that is worth bringing back or not? So it will be interesting to see what the Yankees do. I think of these three teams, the Yankees are the most interesting because they don't have that frontline starter in the minors. They've got some guys who could be middle of the rotation. They've also got a pretty good, player system for them coming up that, for me personally, I kind of feel like the Yankees need to just let the young guys play. Young guys tend to be healthier than the older guys. I mean, the Yankees roster isn't, it's not terribly old, but it's almost like they just play older than they are. I mean, DJ LeMahieu is 34, Stanton and Anthony Rizzo are 33. Those are kind of your three oldest guys on the roster who get the most playing time. And they're not, doing anything close to what we've seen them do in the past or anything like that. So it'll be interesting what they do. If I'm the Yankees, I'm letting the young guys play and letting them see what we have in there. Maybe we go out and this offseason we kind of look to get some youth at some key positions. Especially in the rotation when you've got Garrett Cole, and then that's kind of about it. I do think Carlos Rodon will round back into form, so I'm not too worried about him. But for now, it's not looking too good. And for the Padres, you've got a pretty good farm system coming up. They've got a couple notable free agents in Josh Hader and Blake Snell, who've also been rumored to be dealt at the trade deadline, which for me, looking at your Padres, they're just a very top-heavy team. I mean, you've got your stars in Bogaerts, Tatis, Soto, and Machado, and they're not getting much from anything else. And I think that's the big issue from them. And even when you look at the rotation, Darvish is not doing things that we've seen him do in the past, and he's having a down year. So all three of these teams, I'd say their biggest reasons to why they're failing is because of poor rotation, and they really need to look into getting that turned around. And it will be interesting to see what they do this offseason, considering, like we're talking about, they've got a lot of money. They can go out, they can buy players, they can buy talent. They've got some good farm systems. We've seen with the Padres, they're not afraid to move a lot of their farm hands to get star players. So they've got the means, and they're not scared of using it, but it hasn't worked out for them. So is it worth trying to do it again, or maybe just kind of saying, hey, we won't be so aggressive. Let's just see if maybe we can get some of our current guys to bounce back, and we'll just move forward there and just kind of let the market dictate to us how we want to act, as opposed to us dictating how the market should go. But I've talked a lot, Rafal. Let's hear from you.
So, I think from what you said, I think the biggest takeaway from all these three teams is just relying on your core guys. I think the storyline here for Yankees, Mets, and Padres is that you're relying a lot on your core guys. When they don't produce, you're looking at the role players. And in the Yankees case, you're looking at Josh Donaldson. You're looking at Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. You're looking at a Harrison Bader, who's obviously a little better than just a role player. But when guys like Aaron Judge, who's obviously hurt, guys like Giancarlo Stanton, Anthony Rizzo, those guys, those core guys that you expect that they should be producing and, giving the spark in order for a team to win games. Or in the Padres case, Soto's obviously picked it up. Machado just came back from a wrist injury?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he's still hitting like a man. Machado, Bogarts hasn't really been himself. But other than that, you look at all those three lineups and you say, the Mets also, in the Mets case, Lindor's been struggling all year. Alonso, he was my replacement level player. He's not hitting. And you're looking at guys like Brandon Nimmo is having a great year. But then you look at guys like Tommy Pham. You look at guys like Mark Canha. You look at guys, the younger guys, even Francisco Alvarez is having a good year. There's just a lot of pressure on the core guys on each team, who obviously they should be producing. But when they don't hit, there's not enough depth in order to carry themselves, in order to win games without those guys hitting. Well, like in the Yankees case, the Yankees are now on a 4-game losing streak. They just got swept by the Angels, which hasn't happened in, I think it was, 20 years? So I just think that the biggest takeaway here is that these teams need to round out their lineups if they really want to turn things around. And, obviously the biggest thing is just getting, your stars right. Getting Giancarlo Stanton back on track. Getting Anthony Rizzo back on track. And obviously getting Judge healthy. And in the Padres case, Soto, Machado, Bogarts. Those are 3 big names. So I just think that there's a lot that needs to happen in order for these 3 teams to turn things around. I think that both 3 teams have dug themselves into pretty deep holes. The Padres, Yankees, and Mets. Out of those 3 teams, the Mets are the farthest out of a wild card spot. They're 7 games back. The Padres are second. I think they're 6.5. The Yankees are 3.5 from the Blue Jays. So I think that there's a lot that needs to happen by the trade deadline by August 1st. I think that all 3 of these teams really need to think things through. There is they got 13, 12 games left before the trade deadline happens. I think that the Yankees, and I've seen a lot of tweets saying that the Yankees could be sailors by the deadline, but I really doubt that. Just because they are in the best division in baseball. And I was talking with my brother about this actually. Everyone knows that the Yankees are in the best division in baseball, but I was comparing them where they would stand in other divisions. So it's pretty wild, and because the Yankees are in last place with 3 games over 500, and if you look at every other division, the Central they would be tied for first, the West they would be in third, the AL East they would be in fourth, the NL Central they would be in third, and the NL West they would be in fourth. So when you got all 5 teams over 500, it definitely says something. But for the Yankees, I'm not going to give my vote of confidence here. I just don't think the Yankees are in their best shape right now. I just don't think they have the lineup. The way that they've been performing, the way that their core guys have just not been there all year and they've been completely idle, I think that the Yankees just won't have the year that everyone expected them to. And they just don't have a good enough lineup compared to all these other contenders. I just think that the Padres are much more talented, even though the Padres are also in very good division, the NL West, and they are in a much bigger hole than the Yankees. But I think they have a better chance of finding their way back, just because of their talent. The Mets as well also have a lot of talent, but I think out of these 3 teams, I'd probably pick the Yankees or the Mets, depending on the Mets are obviously worse. And the Yankees are 3 games over 500. But at the end of the season, I would probably pick the Padres to be over the Yankees, honestly. The way that the Yankees are playing, I know it's a very hot take, just because everyone always expects the Yankees to win games. But the way the Yankees have been playing, in terms of talent, on paper, the Padres should be playing better than the Yankees. I think most people know that. On paper, when you have four of the top players in baseball, you should just assume that they win games. They're obviously not. But I just think that a lot can change between now and the end of the season. But I just don't see the Yankees getting any farther than they are right now. The Mets, like I said, the Mets and Padres are in a very deep hole right now. I think what needs to happen for them, like I said, is just getting those role players going. Because, like I said, once you rely on those core guys, and they'll have a tough week where they go, I don't know, 2 for 20, and then you say, hey, we're losing games. What are we gonna do? And then the next week they're back on again, and then you win 7 games straight. But for these three teams, like I said, money doesn't always win games. And in their case, and a team like the Rays, who have one of the lowest payrolls in baseball, and have the second the most wins in baseball right now, that kind of shows like, hey, it could be just about strategy. And when you have a good strategist, you win games, and good things come from that. So I would say that these three teams should mirror the Rays and what they do. But that's kind of my takeaway from this.
Yeah, it's certainly it's definitely interesting season overall. I mean, the teams, there's not a lot of sellers at projected to be at the deadline. There's not going to be a lot necessarily like a lot of projected buyers. We know the Braves will most likely be a buyer, but if you look at their roster, where do they need the help? Probably bullpen because you could always use some more bullpen, and bullpen guys are a little bit volatile. But how much are you going to give up to get a bullpen guy in there? So it's going to be a very interesting trade deadline to see uh, what these teams do and who's active and who's buying. I think you're going to have a lot of teams that are kind of competing for playoff spots that will end up trading with each other because they're both kind of middle of the road. Only one happens to be slightly better than the other one. I mean, that's probably because of the league that they're in, so they got a better shot. I mean, you look at the AL Central, and it's the worst division in baseball. Like you talked about it, the Yankees would be tied for first place. Like that's the only division where the Yankees would be in first place in, like you mentioned. So I think it is interesting. One note when you look at all these rosters, they're very much reliant on playing baseball kind of one way, and that is home runs. These teams, the Yankees are fifth in home runs, in total home runs as a team. Padres are ninth, and the Mets are 10th. So these three teams are all in the top 10 when it comes to home runs. Then on the flip side, when you look at them for stolen bases, only the Padres are in the top 10 with 77 total stolen bases. After that, then the next one's going to be the Mets at 75 and the Yankees at 57. So I think what you're seeing with the teams that are having success, they have kind of some multiple avenues to getting runs. It's not just solely reliant on hitting home runs and kind of getting guys on base, and then that way it's not a solo shot. It's a multi RBI home run. But these three teams in particular, that's kind of how they're built and they're constructed. I mean, their team batting average is 234 for the Pods, 238 for the Mets, 230 for the Yankees. So it's, granted, league average is 248, so they're not too far off of that. But, it does, again, helps play into the fact that these teams are kind of built for modern baseball, which is the all or nothing approach. Like, we're either going to hit a home run or we're going to strike out. Now, granted, with that being said, the Pods, the Yanks, and the Mets are all below league average in team total strikeouts. The Pods are kind of close. League average is 826 strikeouts for the team, and the Padres are 818, Yanks 794, and the Mets 750. So they're not totally in that category of all or nothing, home runs or strikeouts, but they are kind of close to it, and especially when you look at some of the other teams that are having success in baseball and kind of playing towards the playoffs and stuff like that. They're a little bit more just kind of one-sided, and I think that's probably a bigger reason why these teams are struggling. They've got guys who can hit home runs, but they don't have a lot of players around him or doing a good enough job of getting on base. So when your big slurs come up and hit those home runs, it's not just a one run, you know, scoring play that they have there. It's a multiple run, and like home runs can change the outcome of the game. Home runs can get you back in, but again, if you're down 3-0 and you hit a solo shot, cool. You're still down three. You know, you're still down 2 runs. So you need two more solo home runs to get back into it. And where if you get guys in front of you who get on base and then you hit that home run, you tie it up. A perfect example is going to be last night the Mariners versus the Twins. Mariners lost again. They're starting to become a joke at this point, and we won't talk about them. We can say that for another day. But they're down 3-0 to the Twins. They got a couple guys on, and then Eugenio Suarez hits a 3-run home run to tie the game up. And like that's a big momentum shift there. And they're actually, as a fan here, I was like, okay, they've been poor all night, but they're tied up. Maybe they can get one run in here, or they can get to extras and they can have that guy in second. They've got a good bullpen. Maybe they can squeak out a win that they probably shouldn't have, in the first place. Maybe it can happen. That didn't come close to coming to fruition. Like I said, the Mariners lost, but like that's kind of what you kind of need for these teams that have a lot of home run hitters. Is you got to have guys that get on base ahead of them. So you got to have guys that aren't necessarily big home run hitters. And the Mets, the Pods, and the Yanks, they don't necessarily have a lot of guys who fit that mold or aren't necessarily doing that year. And I think. Personally, I think all three of these teams should look at being sellers at the deadline because all these teams, you can make a good case that they're very top heavy. They're going to be reliant on their star players winning them games, and as we've seen this season, that's not been a winning record. So trade some players away, trade some of your big players away, get some guys that are going to be a little bit more role players, or get some guys that are help in the rotation. As we talked about, all these teams could use some more starting pitching help. So just be specific in targeting who who they're going after, and like I said, trading away a player like Max Scherzer, he should bring you in a decent haul if you're not asking too much. I think the Mets, should look at trading Max Scherzer and kind of come at two ways. Do we go for one really high quality player, or do we go for several lower quality players? So kind of a quality versus quantity aspect of it. And with the Mets, I think the latter might be a little bit better of a route to go, considering their starting rotation is Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, and then a lot of crossing the fingers and hoping we get good starts from guys who haven't been good all season long, like Jose Quintana, David Peterson, Carlos Carrasco. And like I said, they don't have anybody in the minors that they can turn to and say, hey, this is our future ace of the staff. We're going to call him up, throw him in, see what we got from him. They don't have that. The guys they have in the minors are going to be back-end rotation guys and possibly be in the bullpen. So, look for teams that have a lot of starting pitchers, especially in their depth in the farm system. A team that comes in mind is the Seattle Mariners. They've got Emerson Hancock. Brian Wu has been really good for them. Go after somebody like the Mariners. See if you can't get a couple prospects in there who maybe aren't your number ones, but they could be number ones on your team because you don't have anybody better. Maybe they're better off being a number two, but still, that would be a nice addition for any of these teams to get somebody like that who could be closer to the front line starter guy, and just getting some more players that would fit and be complementary pieces to your stars, because that's really what you need in order for these teams to kind of really have some big success.
Well, like you said, that's kind of the inherent risk of building your team out of home run hitters, because once you rely on the long ball and you don't get that, and your long ball hitters are struggling, and when your entire payroll is taken up by guys who hit home runs, and home runs don't come every day. So when that doesn't happen, like you said, you're tuned to your guys, your contact hitters, and when you don't have a lot of that, and when those contact hitters are guys that are below average hitters on the daily, then you just don't have a potent team. Because when these guys are struggling, or when you're 300 plus million guys like Soto, Stanton, Machado, those type of guys, then you just don't win games. So, like you said, I think that these three teams should definitely target to buy, even though, like I said before, there's been a lot of tweets about all three of these teams potentially selling, which is obviously not ideal because, all three of these teams are capable of being being contenders, and everyone knows that. These three teams are very prestigious teams. because they spend a lot of money, they get the big names, and sometimes it just doesn't pan out because when they're struggling, you lose games, and that's what happens. So I think it's just more about maybe these teams, all three of these teams should be buying, because at least for them, I would say for the Mets, it might be a little too late, just because they're really out. In the division itself, and just they're just. I mean, they're 5 games under 500. The Padres are what, 4 games under 500? They're 4. No, sorry, 8. 4. Sorry, 4 games. So why are the Giants? Why are the Giants ahead of them? Oh, I'm looking at it wrong. I was looking at it wrong. Never mind. The Giants have 54 wins. I think the Mets and Padres are sort of in a similar hole. They're both in 4th place. They have a similar record. The Padres have one more win, the same amount of losses. I think that they have they're in a similar spot just because everyone knows what their lineups can do when these guys are right, and everyone knows that they have the talent to win games. And when you have a guy like Francisco Lindor, who's one of the best shortstops in the game, then he just doesn't hit. Then it's kind of like, hey, we spent a lot of money on this guy. We gave him everything he wanted because we thought that he would be the player to help us win games, and he's not. So then it's sort of like, hey, let's turn to a guy like a young Brett Beatty, who is just out of AAA, who really tore up the minor leagues. Let's turn to a guy like Francisco Alvarez, who's another very young and has a bright future ahead of him. He's been hot, yeah. But when you turn to guys like that who don't have experience in MLB, and while they have been tearing it up, when time comes for the playoffs, you don't know how they're going to perform. And when you don't have a playoff spot, then you're not getting there. So I do think that out of all these 3 teams, I think the Yankees will be the biggest buyers. I still think that Padres and Mets should consider being buyers, but I don't know. I just don't know, because I think that there's still a good amount of time for these 3 teams to turn things around. We still have more than over half. Not half. We have a little under half a season left. Where are we?
70 games now at this point.
Yeah.
Because coming out
at 76, 70, around 77, 78. So a little over half a season. Sorry, 83, 84 games left. So there's a lot of play left in the season. So I think that there's a lot of chances and there's a lot of opportunities to turn things around. But we'll see. You never know what Steve Cohen's gonna pull from his magic pocket. You never know what Cashman's gonna do, even though he did nothing in the offseason. And you never know what the Padres are gonna do. There's a lot that really could change. So I'm gonna wait it out a little more. Like I said, these 3 teams are in very deep holes right now. But I do think that one thing could just turn it around. So this is a little bit, we kind of switched it up today. Usually we talk about, Chris already got to the awards already last episode because I wasn't there. That would have been a fun topic because we always argue and everything.
Oh, we can still talk about it. I pegged it more as like looking, these are the guys right now who are kind of the front runners for it. So as we get close to the end of the year, like we can definitely circle back and see how many of those guys actually came through and crossed the finish line or going to cross the finish line, and how many guys kind of fell by the wayside. So
yeah, that definitely could be a fun episode. We definitely should reminisce a little bit once we get to the final episode of the season. We should be like, hey, let's look at the past episodes and see what we predicted. Or, when we picked our replacement level players, let's go back at them. Say like, hey, where is he at? As he turned things around, did he fall back even more? But for now, we're gonna close this baby out. Like I said, this is our first episode, me and Chris, and really since I think our last episode together was June 21st. That was the one before the Ed Stein one. I wasn't there for Ed Stein, but for today, I hope you guys like this episode. Make sure to check it out. Spotify, YouTube. Please check it out on YouTube. Subscribe to YouTube. Share with all your friends. That's our newest spot where we promote our stuff. It's now that we're on video, we connect with Sportsnot, and we got all the graphics and stuff. You're on YouTube. We have a full account, see us on Sportsnet and our YouTube account. It's called The Replacement Level Podcast on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Other than that, check out Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Give a like, share it. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode and enjoy the rest of your week.